start. So this is Claudio Lassala. Many of you know him. Software developer extraordinaire. Motorcycle enthusiast. Polyglot musician. You name it, he's done it.
All of those things, yes.
And he's here to give us a talk on leading from the IDE. And yeah, I think best thing I can do now is I'll just shut up and let him take it from here. It's Claudio.
All right, well, thanks, Ahmed. Thanks everybody for showing up. I always say that the HD Nut is one of my fondest groups because the first time I gave a talk to the group was, I think, in 2004, when I barely spoke any English and people still managed to learn something from all the babbling that I was doing at the time. So I've always been very thankful from the days that the group used to meet at the Microsoft office back 2 decades ago, and then it had changes here and there. So I'm very thankful that the grouping has started hosting, and then Ahmed is helping keep the group going. So that's very cool. We have a QR code here later if you're interested in the slide deck. Because people always ask, "Oh, can I get that slide deck?" Yes, you can. Just scan the thing so that you can let me know that you would like to receive it. I'll send that to you, as well as some extra content that I have because it's always impossible for me to cover everything within like a 1 hour, 90 minutes talk. But I have a whole bunch of stuff that I send out to people, and they say, "Oh, I would like to learn a little bit more about this or that," and I'll send that to you. And that QR code will also come up later in the talk as a reminder at the end of the talk. So I've been a technical director at Improving for many years now. I've been with Improving, it's going to be 9 years in just a few months. It's been a while. As Ahmed said, I do some other things, and I make sure to mention that because coding is not what I do in my spare time. So many times people say, "Oh yeah, I've seen Claudio give talks on C# and .NET and this and that. He's probably the guy that goes back home and continues coding, right?" No, that's not at all what I do. I try to engage with other activities to keep my sanity, my peace of mind. And I do blog a lot. I mean, my blog is going to turn 20 years old this August, so there's quite a bit of contents that you can find out there in my own journey. Quickly speaking about Improving, if you're not familiar with Improving is our company here that we host these groups. We're in a whole bunch of places around the world these days. We have a whole bunch of service offerings, including our work with community. It's this, right? It's getting together, providing a space for people to share their lessons learned, and fostering environments like that. It's part of what we do. In which areas, of course, with AI ML being one of the biggest areas for us these days, but application modernization, agility, and a bunch of other things. If you're not familiar, we do have some open positions here in Houston. If you're looking for an opportunity, want to see what's out there, these are the things that we have open. If you see anything that interests you, or maybe you know somebody who would fit that, make sure to send out an email to me there with a resume and just let me know that you were here, that's how you heard about that opportunity. And I can bring that up later if you need it as well. Now, without further ado, let's get into the talk. Why have I created this talk? One of the things is we keep hearing that people are scared about AI taking their jobs, right? As developers, which is the majority of us, like, well, yeah, now I can just tell AI to create software and they don't need developers anymore, so what's going to happen to us, right? But you probably heard someplace, right? AI won't take your job, someone using AI will. Because that's really what's happening. Developers who are cleverly using AI, they are like standing out of the crowd. Today, actually, I went on a little walk on my lunch break because I was thinking, like 30 years ago when I started with this thing, I remember like spreadsheets were the bomb, right? People would learn how to create spreadsheets, and then they would build their business around spreadsheets. Because it's like, oh, I can automate my accounting, my finances by using the spreadsheet thing. And then they got a little bit better. It's like, oh, now I can write some code to transform the data in my spreadsheet and create some visualizations, that's awesome. And people would create businesses around that until their business would outgrow the spreadsheet. And then, oh, now I've heard that there are databases. I can create a database application. Oh, let me grab a book. I saw a book that's Learn Microsoft Access in 21 Days. Oh, let me grab that. Oh, now I created a little application that has a database. Great, now my business is gonna keep growing until the business outgrows that little Access, FoxPro, DBase, whatever the thing was, right? Through all of that happening, whenever the business outgrew the implementation, what would the business owner do? They would either say, I'm gonna sell my business because I wanna keep doing the technical thing, or they're gonna say, well, no, I wanna keep, growing my business. I've become a business person, so I'm gonna offload that to real technical people, professionals. It just has been like that for the last 30 years, right? So now AI is just the same thing. Oh, everybody's now vibe coding. Now the businesses can create software without needing developers. Yeah, they can create just like they could 30 years ago. And then guess what? After they've created something, use an AI tool, they will come back to us developers and say, hey, so I built my business around this application here. Now my business grew wildly. It's amazing. I just don't know how to scale up that application. Can you help me? Right? It comes back to us, right? But from what I've been seeing and experiencing, it's about think about the needs of people, empathy, way more than you think about tools. Because at the end of the day, they are just tools, right? And I've been telling people for many years now, I tend to focus more on developing a very strong back end over the front end, because the back end is the thing that's going to change less often. Like you build a very strong back end, the front end, every tree that you kick, here comes a whole bunch of JavaScript front end frameworks and whatever. So the front end technology keeps changing all the time. Every 2, 3, 5 years, people will come back to you and say, yeah, we need to rewrite the application. Why? Well, because we used to be on the web, now we have to be on the phone. Okay, the front end has changed. Does it have to change the back end? No. Right? Tools, it's about the need, what people need now. At one point, they had desktop computers, that's what they needed. Then they started using web applications, that's what they need. Now they're all using their phones, that's what they need. So we need to pay attention to that to be able to really stay relevant. As long as we are looking at people and what they need and what problems they have that need solving, we are useful to them. If all we do is to write code, yeah, that can be tricky. I mean, we still have COBOL coders, right? There will always be, work for that, but not forever, right? So we need to stay up to date with what's going on, always thinking, how can we make this useful to others? So this is a part of why I wanted to create this talk. And the other side of it is there are many developers who would like to also become team leads. And when they say that, they often think about being technical leads. There's another type of leads when it comes to teams, and I want to go over that. Also, there are situations where a developer would like to try out being a lead, but it's like, well, I'm not gonna give you a team to lead, you don't have experience. Well, so how are you gonna, thanks. Whoops, yeah. So if I don't have a team, how am I gonna practice that? Well, yeah, you can't, so it's a problem. Or maybe you're a developer there that just happened to be there for maybe a little bit longer than the others, and then somebody said, okay, you look like a great leader. You're gonna be our team lead. Right? You're put into that position, like, how do I learn how to do this properly? So there's kind of like both situations. Well, with AI tools now, we can actually either practice the skills of a leader, or we can learn those skills as well. AI can help you, coach you into the process of becoming a lead. Right? It's like, how do you actually do that? And that's part of what I'm going to show you, because I've been doing quite a bit of that myself. So 2 paths to leadership. Technical or team lead is how I've been articulating. Technical is that person that when they say, I want to be a team lead, what they mean is, I want to be the architect that will define, hey, this is the architecture, these are the patterns and the approaches that we're going to be using for this solution, and everybody will follow my lead on that. Technical, right? It's the technical side. What are the tools? What are the frameworks? What are the this, that? Very much from the technical perspective, which is fine. Maybe that's what you want to do. And then if you want to do that, how do you become a good lead at that? Well, you have to be very good at selling your ideas, your approach, or architecture to others. Because it's not just like, oh, I am the architect here. I told you we were going to do CQRS. That's what everybody's doing. Oh, Claudio, what is CQRS? Oh, you don't know that yet? Come on, it's been around for a while, right? You just do because I'll tell you this is how. That's not leadership. That's not leadership. If you decide as a technical lead that people should follow TDD, that people should follow DDD, that people should follow CQRS, you have very good skills to articulate to the business why you're making those decisions, and to the other developers, right? So for something like TDD, people who have heard me for a while know that I'm a big advocate of TDD. Well, I had to learn how to sell it both to developers and to the business. Right? Because if the business says, oh, developer so-and-so says it's taking a little bit longer to implement the feature because they are writing these testing. Why are we doing that? Right? Well, I have to sell the business into the idea. I have to explain to them so they go like, oh, okay, I don't quite fully understand the whole automated tests and designing the code. I don't understand a lot of that. But the way you sold it, it was from the business perspective, the business value. I'm with you there. Right? So you learn to justify technical decisions to people who are not technical. This is technical leadership. Okay? The other bit is team lead from the standpoint of helping your team understand what the purpose of the project, the service that we are creating, the product that we are creating. They understand the purpose of it, and they are fully committed to it, and they are fully engaged and empowered to do their best. So it's more like a people lead type of thing. So in many situations, like in my case, I've been leading teams for at least 20 years now, both as a technical lead, as a team lead. And something that I've been learning is, for the last 10 years, I have not really been keeping up with the very latest version of the .NET framework, which is my main thing, with C#, with all the libraries. I cannot keep up with all of those. All of these open source things, they move really fast. I cannot, and I do not want to keep up with that. But I do want to keep up with the business needs of the people that I'm solving problems for. So I try to specialize on that, and then I rely on my technical folks to do the technical ninja chops to implement the things, the right things. Not just there's this new, JavaScript library that I want to use in the project. Like, what problem does it solve? Oh, I don't know, it's just cool, man, it's a shiny new toy. It's like, nope, you don't have a good why, we're not using that. Right? So you need to know how to navigate both waters. And you can also be a hybrid. You can kind of be in between. Like I said, my role, I stand in the middle lane there, where I can have a look at the technical stuff and it's like, oh, okay, I see that. Well, there's some pretty, deeply technical stuff there that I don't understand. And now, as Ahmed, hey Ahmed, there's a lot of functions and functional programming things that I don't understand here. Can you help me with that, right? And I keep an eye on the other side where it's like, okay, that's the team. We have senior developers, we have junior developers, we have more seasoned developers, and then we have the business. Are they all in sync? That's the other part that I have to execute as a team lead to make sure that that's also happening. So you have to know your strengths and your gaps, right? So like my gaps, as I said, I do not geek out on technology. Oh, there's a new version of the C# language. It does not excite me, right? Oh, there's a million different languages to do blah, blah, blah. What problem does it solve? Why should I care right now, right? And that's just me, right? It's gaps for me because my strengths are in sensing the room, seeing when people go like, that to me like is awesome because if I see somebody like using some piece of software and they're trying to accomplish something in their life and I see them going like, that to me spells opportunity. That person has a problem. If I take the time to listen to that person and understand what kind of problem they are having, then I can come up, yes.
I'm sorry, just since you're stepping on the
Oh, it's not, yeah, I keep moving. I have to stop moving. I can't.
I was want to make sure you don't trip over.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. I was gonna say, should I go into like Claudio presentation mode? Then that's gonna get all animated. Now I lost track. What was the lesson that I said?
Like there's an opportunity there.
Oh yeah, so as I see people using, so we call people who use our system users, and we put them into that bucket, users. I hate that term, and I've been trying to distance myself from that, because if we only think of them as users, we neglect everything else around their environment. So I try to think of them not as users, but as an accountant, as an accounts receivable person, as an engineer, as a CEO. It's a person executing certain accountabilities, and they have problems that need solving. And as part of solving those problems, they may or may not use the computer. So when I'm like hanging out by those guys, I say, okay, I saw you like going like this, what's going on? Well, you see, I have this thing here that I received, and then there's this other sticky note that somebody put on my desk, and then I had this other thing that's up on my wall, and then I look at the system. All of those things should be considered as part of the solution, right? So if you want to be a team lead, that's where your mindset should be. It should not be the, oh, are you using the right cloud provider for that? It's like, dude, you're missing the point. Right now, the conversation is not about what cloud provider you're using. It's about the problem that that person, not that user, that person is having. So think about where you sit in that spectrum. There is value in all of that. The more aware you are of what your strengths and your gaps are, the better position you are to figure out, okay, where should I go here? And what kind of a leader do I want to be? All right, any questions so far? Oh, that all makes sense? Okay, good. Now, just before you guys showed up here, Tony was mentioning about like well, you know, becoming a leader, then maybe you have to like give out the, oh, I'm not writing code anymore because now I'm managing. And I said, well, it's not the same thing, right? We're talking about leadership. I'm talking about a developer stepping up from just being there to write code as they are told. Oh, build me an application to do this. Oh, I'm writing the code for that. So stepping up from that, say, no, I'm going to lead a team of people, whether I'm going to lead technically, to make sure that the technical implementation is sound, or to be the team lead to make sure that everybody's working towards solving the right problem. Do we know what the problem is, and are we solving the right problem, and are we solving it with the best option given what we have on hand? We're not talking about managing, right? Hey, are you done with your work? Right? Oh, you're happy with your salary, right? Are you happy with how much time you have for PTO? Like, no, it's not that. It's not this kind of leadership that I'm talking about here, okay? All right, practicing leadership, technical leadership. How would we do that? A few things that I've learned throughout the years. Clarifying technical expectations, right? So you're working with a team. Not everybody will be on the same page. Not everybody will have the same background. So for me, with my background, I come from X-Base tools, Clipper, Fox Pro, and then some Visual Basic, and then C#, that's where I come from. So I have a very, in the beginning I had a very specific mindset where I would see the world in the form of tables and columns and rows. I saw the world as a relational database, because I came from a database-centric way. Later, when I got into an object-oriented programming language, it was very hard for me to understand that paradigm, but that's also where I spent the majority of my years programming, was in an object-oriented language. When Microsoft started adding some functional aspects to C#, I started learning about functional programming through that perspective. So when I do some functional programming, I end up doing that with an object-oriented accent, right? Because then my mind it's just too close to it. As opposed to working with developers I've worked in the past, where they started with JavaScript, they started with functional programming. So when I'm thinking of abstractions that lend themselves well in object-oriented programming, the guys who are mostly functional, they're like, what are you talking about? That's just a function that does this, that, or the other, or whatever. Or maybe I'm explaining the command pattern, and they say, oh, that's kind of like a function, right? It took me a while to understand, yeah, it's kind of like a function. It's just implemented in a different way in that language. So we have to acknowledge these differences and make it clear to everybody, technically, what are the expectations. Giving precise instructions, right? So giving precise instructions is not like, oh, Ahmed, you need to implement this thing here, this test that I wrote the test, you have to write the implementation. We have to give precise instructions from the standpoint of the receiver. So not from the standpoint of like how you want things done, how you think, oh, this is how you write code around here. Like, no. Think about the person you're assigning the task to. Make sure that you have clear instructions for that person to execute the work. So if I know that Ahmed thinks functional programming first, when I give him the assignment, I should think from that perspective. Or, as I'm going to show, like maybe use AI. If I think objects first, I can use AI to say, how do I explain this to somebody who thinks in a functional mindset first? Right? To optimize this collaboration amongst the group, the team. And ensuring standards and consistency. So it's not the Wild West, different people are writing code, different people think in different ways, but we do want to ensure that there's some consistency throughout the project and what those standards are. So with that in mind, I created a demo here, and because it takes time to run the models and stuff like that, what I did was to record a video showing it so that I can stop the video, explain what I was doing there, and we can streamline the conversation like that. So here's the way I did this. I'm using, sorry, I need to paste things here. In order to practice leadership, you cannot choose to say, oh, I can only work with senior developers. I don't know how to work with junior developers, or I don't know how to work with principal developers. Like, you have to be able to adapt to any of that. So on my daily work, I use Cursor as my IDE for my AI goodness. For this talk, I made the point to do the same things that I do in Cursor. I'm using JetBrains Rider here because it's this idea. Maybe in one situation, Cursor is my junior developer that I'm training, but here I'm working with a different developer, also maybe a junior developer, through a different perspective, who makes decisions in a different manner, because I wanted to highlight the fact that it's not about the tool, what I'm going to be showing here. Oh, I didn't know that JetBrains can do that. It's not about that. It's about why am I doing these things. So here in my IDE, I have a project, right? It's a .NET project. I created a docs folder, right? So imagine onboarding a new developer on your team, and you say, hey, Tony, you're the new developer. I'm gonna give you this user story to work on. Oh, great, Claudio. Do we have any documentation that I can, catch up? Yeah, we have a docs folder there. with a whole bunch of markdown files that have documentation about the architectural decisions we've made, our development process, the expectations, instructions, standards. It's all there, right? You put it there. So that's what I did. Created a little documentations folder, and then said, okay, here's some expectations, right? This is like a tiny example. It's not like from my real world, but I needed to keep to something that we can actually read. But things like this. Every feature must have automated tests. It's just, if I'm leading the team, that is an expectation. I expect people to write automated tests. If you don't know how to write them, ask, right? Which again, it's already showing leadership traits. You don't just say, yeah, you figure it out. You have to write tests. Figure it out. It's like, no, you don't know. It's fine. Just ask. Not a problem. I'll show you how, right? We write unit integration, API, end-to-end tests, which ones depend on how valuable the feature is. Because this is a typical question that I get from folks that join my teams. Like, oh, I see that we have automated tests. Well, what kind of tests? Well, we do these. Oh, do we write those tests for every feature? No, it depends, right, on how valuable the feature is. Oh, how do I know that? Well, let's have that conversation. But by having something like that and making sure it's like, hey, if you don't understand anything here, just ask. It's totally fine. Don't expect everybody to know everything, right? So you set the expectations there. As I move forward here, the other document, I created instructions. So those are more specific, like we use CQRS, command query responsibility segregation. If a feature looks like CRUD, create, retrieve, update, delete. Bring it up. We may need to ask better questions to the stakeholders. Because that's another thing. If I have a say on the project as a team lead, I don't want to see CRUD features, period. I don't want to see a screen where you can create a new record, retrieve the record, update the record. I don't want to see that. Because when people say, oh, it's a simple application, it's just CRUD, until it isn't. Right? Because next thing you know, you're going to have a little button that does a if this thing here and that thing there and this other thing here, you want to enable this thing and then disable that thing and then disable this other thing, and you can only click here if this thing's like, it's no longer CRUD, right? There's knowledge, there's information, there are insights that people are looking for. So I coach people into understanding. If the stakeholders are telling you to create something that looks like CRUD, bring it up. Let's have a conversation. We're going to ask the stakeholders to understand better. Who are the people? What are the problems that they're trying to solve? What do they have around them? When does that thing happen? What decisions they want to make out of it? Do they have to perform actions when they go to the app and go to that screen and they see this kind of information? What is that action, right? Is it a permission-based thing? Let's ask those questions so that we can create a UI that is task-based, right? It's not the task is that I want to create a row in the database. No, that's not the task, right? It's the real world thing. I'm trying to hire a new employee. That's the task. It's not, oh, I'm trying to create an employee row in the employees table and populate the employee's name. That's not the task, okay? So do not think database first. Everything is either a command or a query. So in command query, CQRS, jeez.
What about the plug over there? Are you able to reach it?
Which one?
The one, if you look over there, there's another.
It doesn't go that far.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boy, you need to move the table a little bit. That would more cut you off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man,
Let's get a
it
little
does
bit more.
get pretty close. Let's see.
Push a little bit more, give you a little slide.
Yeah, see if I can get to the. Thank you. Sorry about that. So everything when you do a test-based UI, everything you send into the application, say your APIs, it's either a command or a query. You're either telling your system to do something or you're querying the system for something. You're telling the system, hey, onboard this new employee. That's your command. Or, hey, who are the employees we have not paid this month? Right? It's either a command or a query. Commands are always based on user intent, not on CRUD intent. So it's never like create employee record. No, it's onboard employee, hire employee. Right? What is the intent of the user when they're using the system to do that? So bad, update sales order is shipped, which means load a sales order row and set a bit flag somewhere to some different value. That's bad. It's just talking about how you're interacting with the data. Good, ship sales order. That's what people are trying to do. I want to ship the sales order. But we taught, as an industry, we taught businesses to think, oh yeah, we have to go to the sales order table and just update that flag. Bad, right? We should have learned that by now. Queries, provide answers to the user instead of providing data. When users said, and people say, oh, I just need data. Nope, nope. You probably need information. You're trying to get to the knowledge that that data has been transformed into. You're trying to find insights, to find the answer to something, some question that you have in your head. I need to know what that question is. Because if you ask me to give you data, you probably have questions that you're trying to answer. Tell me what those questions are. I'm going to help you get to those answers faster, right? So query sales order, that's a bad query. Like you just want to do like select star from sales orders, that's not a feature. That's not solving anybody's problem. Oh, I want to see shipped sales orders. Because I'm a seller, and I want to make sure that my sales orders have been shipped because I have the customers on the phone. It's a more specific, business-oriented, real-world-oriented decision. So I write out those instructions. So the new person who's joining the team, they go through those and I say, you go through those. If there's anything there that makes no sense, you just ask. I'll let you know what's up there, why we do these things. More important, it's not how we do it, what we do it, it's why we do those things, right? So I put that, make those as part of the project. As I keep rolling, like a few standards, like hey, for the backend code, we follow standards from the C# conventions. That's a link to the C# documentation on the Microsoft website, unless instructed otherwise in the bullet points below. And then for instance, do not use private modifier. I have my IDE set and my rules set to say, if you're writing C#, don't use the private keyword. You guys know why I use that as a rule? Any guess? Private is the default modifier in C#, meaning it doesn't have to be there. It's the default. So when I look at code, I don't want to see code that shouldn't be there because it makes my mind read private blah blah blah. It's like, don't make me read that. I know if I'm in C#, I just know. If I don't, at some point in my career, I will know. So like if I'm working with a developer who does not know that and they see private and they say, oh, that private we need to remove. Why? And then I explain. Usually it's like, never thought about that. Oh, I like it. Right? You coach people. It's the whole thing about leading. You don't tell people, do this because I tell you to do it like that. It's more like, oh no, here, let me explain my reasoning. Let's see if it resonates. And if it doesn't, right, maybe somebody will come back and say, no, it's better to have private there for the following reason. And we go like, thanks for bringing that up. It totally escaped me. Totally fine, right? But, make it clear. Maybe something about for each, and those were actually notes that I had. Like I favor using the for each method as opposed to using the for each construct in C#. I have my reasons for that. I'm not going to get into it, but like in my own projects, I actually describe that. Why do I have those standards, right? The use of snake case, for instance, like it drives C# developers nuts that I use snake case in my test files, like querying _shipped sales order, right? And using casing for emphases in tests, querying shipped sales orders. Because when I'm writing tests, my intent is to describe behavior. It's not to satisfy the compiler, it's not to satisfy the C# design guideline conventions. That's not what I'm using that language for, right? So I describe that, And when people say, oh, that, well, I don't like that, it doesn't look like C#. Right? Okay, you're gonna have to do better than to say it doesn't look like C#. And then we have a conversation, and then I explain, and then eventually they go like, oh yeah, in the test it's very easy to find out what the test case is about. It's about shipped sales orders, as opposed to anything else, right? So I explain those things, I make it part of the project, so that the people who are getting onboarded can use that. Now, the same way I use these instructions with real people, with humans, I've been using it with AI, right? So I go on my IDE and I say, hello, in this case, writer implements a backend FizzBuzz feature. Make sure to check or to follow our process as, again, let's see what I wrote there. I think it will actually show up on the next one. So as I'm writing there, like, make sure to follow our process as described. I went where I have those documents, I right click and I say, take the path from the solution, because I'm gonna give as a reference to it, right? So I gave it to AI, and then it tells me, yep, I'll help you implement a backend FizzBuzz feature for your project. First, let me check the development process documentation to ensure that I follow the correct standards, and this and that and the other. Right? So this is analogous of you writing out instructions, giving it to the new person that you're onboarding on the team. You give them a task. They'll say, okay, this is the task, these are the instructions, let me see, and go. We're doing the same thing with AI here. So if you have clear communication, if you hone in your ability to clearly communicate your thoughts, your ideas, your standards, your conventions, the same way you communicate to a person, AI will really leverage that, right? It has been very important in the past to be a team lead, a people's lead, and with AI, it's just the same thing. If you garbage in, garbage out. You give AI garbage, guess what you're gonna be getting back, right? So this ability of honing your communication skills will help you leveraging AI tools, and will help you grow your skills to work with humans, with people, right? So it's a way to practice those skills. Let me keep this guy running. So it's writing implementation, it's doing a whole bunch of stuff, it's creating tests, and I'll show you. There we go. Right, so it went ahead, it created the test, because remember, someplace in my instruction I said you have to write tests. Well, it created tests, right? It wrote the C# code, it implemented the feature, following our standards. As I come around, it's the same thing. I'm onboarding a new, say, junior developer. They do the tests, following my instructions, and then I start looking through it as a team lead to see, okay, let me see how you did it. Do you have any questions? You work with the result. You don't just look, yeah, man, you did it all wrong, go redo it. No, you analyze it and you work with the person. So what I'm doing here, I'm going through the code and I'm seeing, oh, you left a lot of like unused import statements in C#. I don't like that. Because remember, my point with the private thing is like, do not keep code that, you know, it's not being used, it has no meaning there. And like my IDE shows, like, yeah, anything that's gray like this, it means it's dead code. Why is it there? Yank it. I don't want to see that there. Right, so what I do is, I make those minor corrections. So I remove that thing there. And then next, it was not using the name spacing, what do they call file level namespace? Just go back a little bit. There, file scoped namespace, right? Because it's a lot of indentation when we had namespace, class, this or the other. In C#, I don't remember which version, you can actually do to file scope namespace, so you remove that arrowhead anti-pattern. Right, so I did that, minor thing there. Then notice that my IDE is complaining about the name of that class because I'm using the snake case, which violates the C# design guidelines. So what I do is on my IDE, I go through it and say, hey, that inspection thing that you're complaining about, the inconsistent name, disable that and make that for the whole file. Because when I'm in tests, I do not care about that guideline. In the production code, I do. Production code follows the C# design guidelines. For my tests, follow my guidelines, right? And I have reasons for that I explain. So I let it run there. I go to another spot like here. There was a nasty like if this, else if this, else if this, which I do not like. I went in and said, yeah, hit the little shortcut, convert to a switch statement, which in this case will work a little bit better. Right, like that. Sometimes I do something like that to use pattern matching or things like that. Because again, maybe the person who wrote the code, writing if, else if, was the only way they knew how to do. They didn't know about pattern matching. No problem. I'll go in there, I'll make that change, and then I'll say, so this part, it works, it passes the test. There's a slight better way or more preferred way to write the code. Here, let me show you. And this is why we prefer that. If the person goes like, man, I do not understand. Can you explain that a little bit more? What I've often done in places is, let's set up like a lunch and learn. Let's bring lunch in tomorrow, and let's get in the training room, and I'll share that. I'll explain to you exactly that thing that I'm doing here, and hopefully next time, you're gonna have a better time writing the code that way. So you use that as a training opportunity, as opposed to like, oh, you've been in C# for 10 years and you don't know how to do that thing? That's not leadership. So then I kept moving through that. I found some other things like here, it's using constructors like this, and I have the option to convert that to a primary constructor. So I kept making these little changes, right? Making the field read-only, converting to a primary constructor, what else? Using the target type here, so I can remove part of the word there. Once I've made the changes, then I went back. Let me have this guy, and this guy, I mean myself type that, my past self type that, and I'll explain what I mean with that. There we go. So similarly to working with a real person, where I would go through their work, make a few changes, and say, hey, I made some changes, look through them, like do a code diff, and let me know anything that you don't understand from the changes that I made. That way I don't restate something that you already know, and then we can work from there. So I did the same thing with AI, right? I made the changes on the code that it created, and I said, I've made some changes mostly related to coding style. I'm being very specific. It's just the coding style. We prefer this other way here. Analyze them and update instructions in our docs/development process so you remember them in the future. Again, giving it to a new developer on your team, say, I made these changes. Yeah, sorry, we didn't have that in the instructions before. Can you go through it? Can you update the documentation for us? Right, so you're training the person to learn and then to rewrite what they've learned in instructions that they will remember later and use, and other developers will the same way. We're doing the same thing with AI here. Okay, we had initial instructions, we need to update them. You make the changes and you tell it, look at the changes from a coding style perspective, see what you find out, and then update the instructions, update the documentation. Remember that nobody here likes maintaining documentation, right? Am I wrong there? Do you guys love keeping up with documentation? I know you do.
Yeah.
Right? You're the oddball here, man. Right? But most people are like, oh man, we don't have time for that. Well, AI has time, right? You just tell it, hey, go ahead and update the documentation for us. ask me any clarifying questions you might have to create great instructions. That's another part that people tend to forget. They say, oh, AI is doing all wrong. I write code so much better than AI. Here, let me show you. Maybe you're just using AI wrong, my friend, right? Work with AI the same way you would work with a person. You show them instruction and say, you know, if you have questions, ask me. If you have suggestions, make those suggestions. That's another point that a lot of people miss. Even if you're working with like a junior developer, say, hey, for the thing that I told you to do you have any suggestions for us to do better? Invite them. Oh, but I'm the senior, I'm the principal. It doesn't matter. The perspective from that junior is different than yours, and it can add to that, to the experience. Same thing with AI. I've been doing this, and like some of the suggestions that I get, like, ooh, well, thanks for telling me that, right? Because I was busy doing something else, I didn't realize that was a possibility. So I tell it to do that. It goes ahead and says, I'll help analyze the changes and update instructions. It found the C# coding style changes that I've made. It's updating standards. It created a new file called code style. So it's already reorganizing our documentation in a better way. I didn't even tell it to do it exactly like that. It's doing it. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with that. So it went ahead and it created a code style guidelines, C# file structure, use file scopes namespace with semicolon syntax. And then there's an example. Organize files by feature, not by type. Refer one class per file unless classes are tightly coupled. Modern C# feature, primary constructors. Use primary constructors for single classes, da 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 da. So I didn't have to write that. I did the work, but sometimes isn't it easy to just like, you go in and you make the changes, and then this guy analyzes the changes, and it creates the samples, it writes the markdown in a way that's readable, but more importantly, in a way that's optimized for AI models to read those instructions and do better next time, right? So next time when I ask this guy to write code, it will use these instructions. So I'm not going to have to tell it again to do those things. So that's where it's a part that's slightly different than working with humans, right? Because AI will catch that up pretty quick. We humans, I know I'm a very slow learner. It takes me a while to actually get up to speed.
So these documents that you have created, is that for the per project one, or is it like for overall? Or?
These are for the project.
These are for the project.
But if you have something that's like company-wide, as long as you can point AI to it, then it doesn't matter. So like for these, yes, they are very much like project-specific. But when you go into the chat window there, you can point and refer to something external. So if you have like a wiki page, Confluent, wherever the company keeps those standards, you just point to those. Right, and you could have like in your project, you say, use company-wide standards. That's where you go find. And you'll see here, I actually use, it's gonna be in one of the demos, like I pointed to some of my blog posts for it to learn about my approach and create instructions. Because it's like, yeah, years ago I wrote about that. I wrote about how I see the differences between TDD and BDD. Look at that, and now you know how I want to perform BDD and TDD, right? Any other questions?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So in your prompts that you've shown so far, you're basically physically pointing the LLM to point to the file that you want to read.
Yes.
So why aren't you using something like system prompts for like GitHub Copilot that lets you do this kind of functionality? And I haven't played around with it, but I would assume that you wouldn't have to point the LLM at the file explicitly because it just kind of gets tacked on to your request to the LLM.
Yes, so I know nothing about GitHub Copilot. So the reference you just made, I'm kind of like linking, I think it's something similar to cursor rules. So it's just something that just automatically gets attached to the chat. Is that what?
Yeah, it's kind of like so the scenario I would think would be like if you wanna set up LLM to generate code for your entire team, you go through, create the system prompt, and then you check it in with your code, and that way everybody in your team has it.
Right.
So,
Yes.
I haven't had a chance to play around with it, but I've heard about it, and I've suggested it to the technical architect on the project I'm working on. Say, hey, why don't you do this?
Yes.
And it'll help bring us new people.
Yes. So these are like the building blocks, right? And eventually we're gonna get to those like, well, I don't wanna keep like adding those individual files. So with these building blocks, what I'm doing is, in my real world client project, what I'm doing is I'm creating like certain rules that always get attached to the chats and they belong in the project. So anybody who pulls that project and opens it in the tools, it already uses that. Like, oh, the private thing in C#? Yeah, it's already, yeah. We don't have to be pointing to those. And then I'm fine tuning it so that I'm gonna have a top level, like user story work checklist. That is my top level thing where I say, right now, and maybe for the next 2 weeks, we're gonna be working on this user story. So that top level point of entry will be the one that will have references to like, what instructions do we need to accomplish this thing here? Because depending on the nature of the story, like, okay, it's a story that it's a view that will only show information to the user. We're not posting anything and this and that and the other. So we have standards as to how we create those endpoints, the controllers, the tests for that, the UI parts for it. We have standards for all of that. So in this top level instruction, I put in some instructions where it knows, based on the story that I give, it knows, oh, it's the kind of story that we don't have a post, it's just a get, it's a query. So at that point, we are not pointing to individual, like a whole bunch of individual files, it's just like, this is a story that we're working on. And then from there, it has references to other instructions. I think, does that? Kind of, okay, what's missing?
I was just curious, basically the approach that you would take.
Okay.
Because it feels tedious to me if I have to go through and say, you know, hey, look at this document to pick up
Yes.
the coding standards for this particular project.
Yeah.
It seems like it would save you more time and effort if it's just kind of baked into the request that actually.
So you're like taking a few more steps ahead. So that's where you're gonna land. I decided to start with this, like, okay, take one thing, like one file, one thing. Another thing, like standards, expectations. Like start building those files. Eventually you're gonna go like, well, that's a lot of files. Okay, what would you abstract that in a top level instruction that could be based on if you're writing endpoints, API endpoints, you really have a set of instructions. That's the thing that you may want to point to, and possibly not the other one. Because I'm being also conscious of not like dropping a whole bunch of stuff into the chat context, because then it's a lot of tokens that's going to consume. Like, you don't need all of that. All you need is this. But it starts from the building blocks. It's identifying this tiny little things, and then it's like, how can you group them in a way that makes sense?
So isn't this, aren't you doing this just one time, or is it like every time you create?
Oh, one time, as you create the documents, if you create the document, like in this case, the way I'm doing is I create a document, it's part of the project, so it gets committed to source control and it's available to everybody.
No, what I'm saying is like if we have the documents in like a repository.
Uh-huh.
So on your like a VS Code or Visual Studio, you can just point to, hey, go to this one for my instructions. And that's it for any project you create, that's what it will look into. Right?
Yeah, so it would do like a project level rule or file event, like in Cursor they say Cursor rules, in GitHub Copilot they have, it's the same feature named something different, right? It's a set of rules.
System prompt, I think is what it's called.
There you go, right? It's like rules that are applied entirely to this project. So you create that for the project, and as you create, you probably have a template to say, these are the company standards. right? So every like new project, you have like your README
Oh,
file or
okay.
your
So-
starting file.
So isn't it at like your, whenever you install like Visual Studio, so whatever project you create, it just goes there, it will-
Yeah, you can say, yeah, you have a project template in Visual Studio, and you say for the project template, add this rule, and the rule says, go look for company level standards here, and here are the project specific ones,
Oh, okay.
right?
So real quick,
Yeah.
what you were saying about saving tokens and things like that,
Mhm.
if you're using something like the chat, LLM has no memory of what you do, right, between requests. So you have to basically send the chat to the LLM, and it's gotta run through that.
Maybe,
I
maybe
think-
I'll show you, so yes.
I think that is only if you, I think for the previous chat to be accessed, I think you have to be like logged on versus like using it as an anonymous user, I think.
Yeah, we'll have a look a little bit about that, because yes, that is a problem, right? As the chat grows, longer and longer, then it starts like losing track of things, and it gets pretty like, woo! This will help us solve some of that. So let's keep rolling through this. So we looked at that, created a file for me. Instead of this pattern, use this other pattern, use pattern matching over traditional conditionals. So it's aware of these things, right? Testing practices. This is a good method name. Do that instead of this other thing here, right? So it documented that for me, and I was showing, the test conventions. All right, and then I say that is all great. I noticed you favored arrange act assert for tests. Are you familiar with given when then format? So when it wrote, so it saw in my instructions that our expectations is you have to write tests. But there I didn't see exactly the format of those tests, right? So it wrote the test using the arrange, blah, 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 act, da, 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 assert, da, 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 which is not the way I favor. So I asked, I noticed he used AAA, are you familiar with given when then? Because that's what I do with a real developer. I say, are you familiar with that? If not, that's totally fine. Let's talk about it. If so, write instructions on how you would write tests following that format. So, yep, go ahead and do the thing. And it says, yes, I'm familiar with given when then, which is key part of behavior-driven development. It's a great alternative to arrange act assert that can make tests more readable and focused on business behavior. I'll create instructions for writing tests using this format. Again, I didn't tell it, hey, this is how I want you to do. It's like, hey, do you know about this thing? What do you know about it? Tell me. As if working with a person. Because different LLMs may give you a slightly different interpretation of that. By asking it, you see, oh no, that's not at all what I meant. Right? So it gives you a chance. And instead of going like, oh, I told AI to do the thing and it came back with something completely bizarre. Well, ask it. Like, why did you come to that conclusion? How did you get there? The whole reasoning thing. How did you reason this implementation? Because then it will give you information and you can find the gap. It's like, oh, okay, I need to give you a little bit more context. I have to give you a little bit better information. So it went ahead and it updated the testing guidelines as it's going there. The standards, the style guide, there we go. So it says, instead of use arrange act assert, use given when then. Use clear behavior-focused names that follow the pattern, expected outcome, when certain condition. So it wrote all these things based on what it thought it was going to be a good thing. Given, when, then, the structure, the implementation, like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then what caught me is it's a very common problem with a lot of developers. It's like, no, don't do arrange act assert, do given, when, then. What do? They just replace the words in the comments. Like, no, that's not what we meant. Because then at that point it makes no difference. Right? It's just, it doesn't matter what you write in those comments What matters is what you're doing here. And this, in my mind, is still technical. It's still too closely tied to the actual implementation. I don't want to see the actual implementation or even the abstraction. I want to see why you are doing the thing. And that's where I want to explore the given, when, then, like what do those represent? But that's totally fine because, as I said, with most real people, developers, that's the common thing. I saw something just like that 2 days ago, right? Somebody said, oh yeah, I'm just now going with a given when then instead of a range active search. And this is what they did. Like, well, we're missing the point. Let's have a conversation. I can help you understand why we don't do it that way. But you first ask. So I let that run. Like, okay, that's what we want to do. Let's give that a shot, right? So, and then what I actually said was the following. That is good, but let's make it better. For GWC tests, we have some preferences. Analyze the following blog posts and update instructions accordingly. And then I let it run a little bit more because I went to, so here's the thing, right? I've given these instructions to people, a lot of people over the years, right? So I have this blog post from 2022. The differences between TD and BDD. I wrote that because people kept asking that question. I'm like, oh, let me write something, and then now I can just point people to the thing, right? Well, now I can tell AI, hey, look at these things here. I've gone through this already. Have a look at these, see what you learn, and then we can have a conversation from that point on, right? Streamlining that process. So I went out, I grabbed some of these blog posts that I put out over the years, right? I just paste it there, because then the tool can go out and read those. I have a very specific way that I think about given when then, where I see, it's another thing that as I coach people into writing given when thens, a lot of people have a hard time writing those instructions. And the way I've learned to think about it is, given is past, when is present, then is future. There, like I internalize it in that manner, so I wrote it like a blog post, I drew it because I think in images, so I drew something, I drew even a little comic strip kind of thing, right? And that's what I give the LLM, because the tool can actually see those images that I drew up, and it can use that information to learn about my approach and create instructions for that. So the other thing I said was also, we do not use comments in code for simple, obvious things. Analyze this post for more guidance and update instructions. So I have a whole separate blog post where I talk about, comments in code. Because again, real people will say, oh, what is your take on putting comment in code? Before I say anything, read this post. Because I document how my opinion over that evolved and why I've landed on these standards that I currently follow, right? So there's a whole bunch of information there. I tell AI, go look at that, and then you update instructions based on that. So that instead of, when I tell you to write code, instead of dropping a whole bunch of comments, you look at these instructions. Because I don't want to see something like, if client owes us money, if parentheses, client dot owes us money equals true. Like, well, the C# code already tells me what you're trying to tell me with the comment. Don't do that. It's pointless, right? So that's what is on my blog post there. Unless you're telling me something that's useful to read, don't put it there. So gave it to the tool here. It's going through that. It's updating the things. It created a new file for code comments. See where do I land? Yeah, so it picked up the whole given, when, then, past, present, future. It documented that. It updated examples here. Example clear test without comments. What else did it put there? Do comments. Complex business rules or algorithms that aren't immediately obvious. Workaround for bugs or limitations in external libraries. non-obvious performance optimizations. So things that it caught from my blog post, it just added that here as part of the project. Don't comment to explain what a method does. Use descriptive names instead, right? So if you're thinking about putting a comment to explain the method, name the method after the explanation that you're thinking about putting there. It's just clean code 101, right? It's a very common practice. So I've encoded that in natural language like that and tell AI to use it. And then good and bad examples of comments. And then the other thing I did, I went over to the tests, and let's see, I copied a reference to that folder that has the tests. And here's what I told it. Those instructions are still a little off. Look at the tests under this folder for a reference. So in that project, I had a folder with a whole bunch of tests that I wrote previously. That's like, yeah, Tony, look at these tests here. See how I did it there, see what you learned from there, and then update the instructions. That's kind of like what I did with the AI here. Go look at this other thing here. I think you're going to learn a few more things, and then you tell me what you learned and how you're updating things. So I gave it those references. It is reading through them, and it's updating instructions one more time. Keep going. Now it's already changed. Look at how it rewrote instructions. Because this is how I want to see the test. When I open a test, I want to read, given some condition, when some action, then expect some result. I don't want to see, the / given, like that's nonsense. This is what I want to see. Oh, why? Because then these become reusable methods within my test that I can then write newer tests just by reusing some setup that I already have, some expectations, assertions that I already have. This guy is self-describing, and depending on the situation, I turn those into strings, so when I look at the output of the test, it actually writes those out. Like Ahmed helped me with something similar in Cypress tests, right? Where we read the test like this, but the output uses that information to create something human readable, removing the underscores and stuff like that, right? That's, again, my preference. If I'm leading the project, this is how we're doing things, and I can explain, all day why we do those things. But you want to make it always clear why we do these things. What is the value? Coolest thing, I explain these things to non-technical people, to my product owner, for instance. And then I see him explaining to others why we do those things, right? Because I made it so that they understand, the business owners, they understand why these things are valuable. And because they understand, they believe in the practice, they send that message forward. I don't have to justify that anymore. They already do that for us. Because you have to hone in that skill of communication. All right, cool. So I told the guy to go in, and let me go back a little bit, right? So I told it to look at another set of tests, learn the patterns, update the instructions, and I'm like, okay, remember the thing I just gave you, Tony, to write? Now you have the instructions, go refactor what you did first to conform with this standard, right? Have it a go. So I said, go ahead and refactor that based on those instructions. It goes through. Notice that it's creating the file. Oh, the other thing is, it identified in my other existing tests that I don't do the one test file per class, for instance, where you end up with one test file that has 1,000 lines of code because the class has like 10 methods, and then you have multiple tests for all of those different methods, and it becomes this mess that nobody wants to maintain anymore. I split my tests per use case, per scenario. I don't care what class or method implements those. I care about the scenarios. So it picked up on that preference, it updated the instructions on that. When I told it to refactor the test, it split the initial test on my FizzBuzz into individual scenarios. So it created a context class that has the test setup and the assertions that the other tests use. And then it created one file per scenario. Valid range, invalid range, large ranges, specific number, this, that, or the other. It's already doing that work. Just like I didn't tell it, I said, here's how we can find some patterns, write instructions for that, refactor your code based on those patterns. All right, go ahead and do the thing, right? It explains to me, relays back to me what it did, and oops, there we go, right? Sure enough, now we have the test exactly the way I like it, right? Should return correct sequence. Given range from 1 to 15 when requesting FizzBuzz, then response should be successful, then response should contain correct sequence, right? It's a contrived example, it's a small example that I can share with you guys here, but this is precisely how I've been doing for years in real projects for real clients. You open the test that we write as a team, they look like this, very concise, very terse. It explains the behaviors that we're searching for, looking for. It doesn't show the implementation immediately. Because if I want to change the implementation, I don't need to change my test, right? I change the implementation, not the test. The behavior, the expectation doesn't have to change. It's implementation. Okay, you change that thing here, not this guy here, right? It's like the main thing about refactoring, right? Changing the internal implementation without changing the external observable behavior. External observable behavior, right? If you want to change the internal implementation, you don't change this, you change the implementation, right? That's why we do those things, and this is how I've been leveraging coaching AI as I coach other people. So showing those things, it missed, like I skipped over that, but when it created the code, it didn't add some using statements. That's why my IDE was complaining. So it's another one of those. I hit the thing to add the using statement, and I say, hey, you forgot to add the using statements. Add it to the instructions. Or, once again, I may look at the change and say, oh, you missed a few things. I may make the changes, and I say, I've made changes to the code you created. Analyze the changes, update the instructions, refactor the code. Take steps like that, and if you take the time to do that, the next time you give a test like that, boom, done. Like a few months ago, I had just finished writing some instructions to write tests in a .NET project in the part that uses fluent validations, right, to validate commands that come through Mediator. Because I had instructions, I just pointed the tool to the instructions and to the user story and say, hey, this is how we write validations. This is the user story. Write tests for that. 2 minutes, I had 35 tests or something like that. Something that without those instructions, like last year, it would take me maybe 2 days to write all of those test cases, because I would not have thought of all of those test cases. That's the other thing, right? It would have taken me 2 days to like set it all up, think about the test cases, look at the test cases in the user story, identifying which other test cases we might need to consider. It would take me time to do all that. Well, AI with just some initial instructions, bam, 2 minutes later I have 35 tests. I run them, 2 of them fail. And when I look at it, it's because it didn't know how to infer time-sensitive tests, right? Where the time part, the date, and the time when something happened is what we are testing. Like, oh, this thing happened 2 days ago, right? When you set that up, well, the AI thing didn't know how to write those tests, and my instructions didn't have that. When I saw it, I was like, oh, again, I made a change, made the test pass, and I said, here, this test that was failing, I made a change that make it pass. Read the change, update the instructions. Oh, I see. When we have a date, something, something, we are using know the time so we can fake the time to whatever it is that we're setting the clock to. Right? Yep. That's it. Right? So those are important things to try. We're almost done with this part of the talk. I do like, this is something it did that I didn't tell it to do, but like on that first one, first line, given range from 1 to 1,000, comments, large range that would exceed reasonable response size. Like, oh, yeah, I didn't think, like when we created the requirements for this, like what is a number, a range, a valid range? I didn't think of that. So AI didn't have information, it put a comment there. I'm like, yeah, that kind of comment, that's good. And yeah, my IDE, for years, I've had it set like this. It shows yellow on red. Why? Because if the comment is important, it has to stand out to make me read it. And it's like, yeah, assuming API, this, that, or the other. So the same way as people, when we make assumptions, AI here for me, it's documenting the assumptions that it made. So it allows me to read and say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Let me go check. Right? So that is another thing that came as an important exercise out of that. And then, last but not least, so we had a little bit more about that. It implemented the tests the way I like them implemented. There we go. Okay, good. I think that was that on that part. Take a sip. Questions? Yes.
Did you delete the FizzBuzz example and then just get it to rerun it again to see if it gave you the same output?
It will not give you the same output. It never will.
So not even, but if you're writing all these guidelines to tell it what to do, the output's got to be fairly similar.
Yes.
So then it's just a case of refining it, putting it back in, and the more times you do that, you're training your model effectively to, not training your model, but you're training your interpreter to work off better.
Yeah, because it's that thing, you're not really training the model, right? You're
Improving the prompt.
You're improving the prompts, thank you, right? And feeding the same model, or sometimes different models. That's another thing. Yes, that's another thing that sometimes we try. It's like, okay, I'm telling you to do this thing, here are the instructions, I see the results, I'm like, wait a minute, let me try a different model.
Okay.
A more powerful model or a more expensive model and see what comes out. And it's like, and sometimes what comes back is like, oh, it's not what I was thinking, but that's actually better than what I was thinking.
Did you try that then to see how?
With this one,
Yeah, with that.
I have not. I will try that.
Because I was thinking if you were going to put those in kind of like top level repositories, like your project standards,
Yes.
then they've got to produce fairly consistent results.
Right.
You can't, whatever you're going to be using, they can't be like graph. So yeah, if you're not getting consistency,
Yes.
it feeds the object.
So what it does consistently is, if I have instructions to say, we write tests in given when then format, we follow context-based organization of those, it will do exactly that,
Exactly, yeah.
right?
Might have a different name for the given when step, but it will still follow the
Which is fine, because like the different names for the given events, like, yeah, that is expected, because those are written based on the user story that I'm telling you to write tests for, right? And so over time, as we keep improving these instructions, it keeps getting better and better. And then oftentimes, like, yeah, 10 user stories we've implemented this far, it keeps getting easier and easier and better. And then we feed it this story that has things that's like, yeah, we haven't seen those before. That's different. So sometimes it goes like, it produces some results that's like, whoa, that is weird. But then you ask, it's like, how did you get to that? And it's like, oh yeah, you're missing context that I didn't give you.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, that's more of a context out than a context refinement, effectively.
So every time you add it to ask it to refactor, it'll slightly change the context, or it'll actually remove the context sometimes. It'll put it back in. If you ask the same prompts over again, the same question. Yeah. So it's not. It is different every single time.
So how would you check that into code repo? If like you run that on FizzBuzz, I come along, I want to add some code to it, and I'm like, right, add this to this bit of code. All of a sudden it starts changing all the comments.
It would not change the comments unless.
But if I said I want to alter the implementation of FizzBuzz, and I want to do FizzBuzz, whatever, I forget the additions of what FizzBuzz was, I now say I want FizzBuzz to do these kind of things. So it now has to change the implementation all the way through there. So there might be comments that should stay the same, but it's going to
I use Google Gemini, and it always changes.
always change. Okay, yeah.
I don't know about cursors.
So I try, so what I've learned with this, what I've been learning, and it's, these things are moving fast.
Yeah.
So even things that I have documented here, so I recorded this demo about a month ago. The way I was just doing something similar this morning was already different. Because some of these tools, they are moving really fast. Right? So that's why I said, let's focus on why I'm doing these things, not exactly how I'm doing, because those are changing, because of the tools moving really fast. So something that I've learned to focus on is not to get married to the code implementation, because yeah, that will, depending on what you tell it to do, it will change that.
But a PR is going to be huge. If every time it's going through all these top places and changing things, it just has no business changing. And
So where the payoff is coming for me is, and I'm gonna actually, I think it's coming up on the next bit, but if it doesn't, I'm gonna get a head start there anyways. Instead of going in and making, say, a change to the code or to the instruction, I write a new user story. So I say, all right, this implementation of FizzBuzz, for instance, now there is a new way to do that thing, or there are new requirements or whatever. I write a new story documenting, like, what is that? What's changing? Why is it changing, right? I write that as a user story. And then I ask AI, hey, look, we have this current implementation which should have come from another user story. So I can tell AI, hey, remember these user stories? It doesn't, right? You point to these stories, like here you find the stories. This is how this implementation evolved. Now we have a new one. Create a plan to execute these changes. So it's gonna look through that and say, oh, I see that we first did this and then we did that, and now we have this implementation. Well, to achieve these results, these are the things we need to change. We need to change this method, we need to change this other thing, we need to update this test. It creates that plan for you, giving you a chance to say, okay, let me review that. Yes, yes, no, that's not good, this is what you should do. This, I didn't think of that. Tell me more about this. You have this conversation to understand what the plan is. Once you as a human say, this, go ahead and do that. So I'm focusing on the quality of my stories over the quality of the implementation. I do have the quality of the implementation coming in the, okay, whatever you wrote there, it passes the tests, it meets the criteria, but I don't like that code, that's nasty. I'm gonna make some changes. Let's update our technical instructions. Now, refactor the test, the code, whatever, according to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose my curiosity really came from the idea of if that was now checked in as a branch, that's checked. And you start doing this, is it going to rewrite all of that file and changing all the bits of comments and all the bits of everything in there? Or is it just going to change the piece that it needs?
It should change in the implementation code.
Just the piece that it needs.
In the implementation code, it should be only the piece that it needs.
PR would be pretty standard then. You wouldn't get
Yes.
all the comments and everything changing.
Yeah. But keep an eye on it, because that's what we would hope it to do. A few weeks ago, I asked it to make a change that to one file, it was supposed to be a one-liner. For whatever reason, I don't remember asking it why, but it has changed so many things in the file that I'm like, what are you doing there? So don't ever just like tell it to do things and trust it. Unless you have some pretty good like systems to verify what it did. right? Because sometimes it goes like, woo, cuckoo bananas. It's been getting better. I haven't seen like these kind of behaviors, like I tell it to do one thing, it does the one thing, but it also decides to do other things, kind of like humans, right? So that's a perfect example, right? We tell a new person, new junior developer, oh, go do this thing, implement this thing. Or not juniors, seniors. But seniors, you know it all type of thing, right? We've all been there, I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah, you told me to move this bottle from here to here. Okay, I did that, but I think this is in the wrong place. Let me put it over here. This phone, I don't think we need this phone. I'm gonna throw it away. And then we do that, right? We keep doing those things. Oh, I'm gonna write this method just because. What if we need this? We do that. So does AI, right? Again, difference being that with humans, we say, yeah, don't do that. We need that phone here. Please don't mess with it. And it takes for us time to catch up. With AI, it's quicker, right? As you identify these things, it's like, dude, what are you doing there? You update instruction. Next time, it's very likely that it's going to follow that. Every once in a while, you're going to run into something like, what are you doing? But I've learned to ask, is like, the instruction says this thing, why did you do this? And then it will say something, and sometimes it's going to say, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, I overlooked that. And sometimes this is pretty funny. I'm watching, I tell the thing to do something, and then it says, oh, I'm reading this file, you see on my logs there. I'm reading this file, I'm analyzing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, bloop, I did this. Oh, and then this morning I saw that. Oh, wait, I got that wrong. Let me fix that. Like, that is pretty special. I hadn't
Really?
seen that.
Probably just 5 seconds.
I was just watching. I said, go do the thing. Doing this, doing that. Because I'm saying, okay, where are you looking? Because sometimes I'm like, no. Because sometimes it cannot find in the context or in my instructions the thing that it should be. And I know as a human, it's like, no, that test is under purchasing, orders, cost calculation. Like, I know that it's there. But the way I prompted AI, it goes to like a file search into the entire project. Like, no, stop. Similarly to working with a person. You say, hello person, go do this thing, and you go see them doing it. Like, no, don't even look there. It's not gonna be there, it's gonna be over here. Same thing. So I tell AI to do the thing, I watch what it's doing. If it's doing something really stupid, stop here. So this morning, it was the first time I saw this thing. Oh, I got it wrong. This is where I got it wrong. And why? Let me fix it by doing this other thing. Okay, this is very good, you know? Good. Any other questions on that before I move on to the other page here? All good? All right. So that was practicing being a technical lead, right? Because there, even though it's impossible for me not to go look at the business side of things, the whys of things, the BDD reasoning that I follow, but that was still like very much on the technical side. How you write code, how do you write the tests, how you structure the tests, and CQRS and commands and queries. That's very technical still. It's a way to practice that skill. If that's the thing, like, yeah, I want to lead a team from the technical perspective, these are some things that you can do and you can think about and you can practice with AI on a daily basis. Even though I lead a team with real people, I'm also leading AI. I see AI as just more people that I have available to help, execute the project. Now, moving on from there, how do we practice team leadership? We need to learn to translate stakeholder needs into stories. You might want to say, oh, I'm a developer, I write code. Well, writing stories, it's not my thing. By the way, plug, very intentional right now. I'm giving a talk on how to write effective user stories next week over here. I think it's on Tuesday for the Houston Business Analysts group. You may want to come and check that out, because that I go more in depth into the whole story writing things. Because it's one of the things that I value as somebody, working on software projects. I do not care who's supposed to be writing stories. Oh, it's the product owner, it's the business analyst. Like, no, it's everybody. It's the responsibility of everybody who gets anywhere close to the thing that you're trying to build. It's an accountability. It has to happen. Who has to do it? Whoever can do it, right? So as a team lead, I've learned that that's a skill that is really welcomed by business people and by technical people, both. You hone in that skill, people will come to you with opportunities, right? Listening and clarifying the problem, helping developers understand the why, because it's very hard, depending on where people are in their software development journey, they only think about the semicolons, the curly braces, that's all they can think of, right? So they need somebody to actually help and say, okay, let's step back from all that, programming language mumbo jumbo, and let's focus on why we're actually getting paid to write code to somebody to begin with. It's a very important thing that a lot of people miss. So a simple, good, bad example of how we even taught the industry to think about. Developers there sitting with a stakeholder, the stakeholder says, blah, 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 checklist, blah, 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 blah. Developer says, oh, checklist, here, hold my beer. I'll go do the thing for you. I know everything about checklists. Wait, no, I know it, I've been there, I've done that, right? Because we know it all. And then what comes out? There's some relational database that says, oh yeah, we have a checklist that has dates and a checklist group, because we're going to group the items within that checklist. And we're going to set the description, the reminder date, and the sort order, right? Because, yeah, I'm thinking, how are we going to store that in the database? And it's usually in a relational database, right? Even though nobody said how or where you should be starting, the person just said, checklist. Okay, I got it. I know you did it, right? And then also the UI that comes out of it, guess what? CRUD, right? It's a list of things, and then you see edit, delete, and da-da-da. Anybody who sticks around me long enough, they will hear about my hatred of seeing delete on any user interface, right? And I'm going to save that for next week. You guys want to hear more, you come to my talk next week. So this for me is just a bad, it's a good example of a bad example, because most developers, that's all they think. They hear customer, sales order, products. Oh, great. Customer, one too many to sales orders, many too many to products in the order. That's how most developers are thinking, is how is that data stored in the database? And then of course, oh, the UI is simple. We just do a list here, some buttons to edit, delete. That does not solve people's problems, okay? So we need to learn to identify those things. And so for this one, what I use is one of my own projects. That's where that thing came from. One of my hobbies is riding motorcycles. So years ago, I wrote some software to help me create checklists, not just any checklist. Checklists tailored to people who work all week long like myself, and over the weekend, I want to go to the racetrack and have some fun there. And I want to make sure that I don't forget the things that are important when I'm out there. And it's very specific, like I have a process and a flow for that checklist. It's not just a regular checklist. But that developer there didn't bother even hearing what I had to say about what problem do I have? Like, what is the issue? What am I trying to solve? So what I did was to work with AI to provide a stakeholder need or user story to AI, my AI companion. Use AI to generate given and then examples describing your needs there. Discuss iteration and clarification of those requirements, if you will. Why have I, oh yeah, this is the demo that I need to swap over here. So how did I go about doing that here? I went into my project, so this is a separate project, it's not the FizzBuzz one. It's the project that I started creating because I'm rewriting. So imagine this, I have that as a legacy system that I wrote many years ago in one tech stack. Now I want to rewrite that in a different tech stack, solving different problems that I have now. So I went to my project, and I have a docs, backlog, epics, and then the features underneath that project. I went ahead and created a directory or a folder called checklists, because that's the main thing we're trying to solve here. And then I created a markdown file with the initial conversation we've had with the stakeholder. I'm the main stakeholder here, okay? But let's pretend that the developer talked to me, the stakeholder, and then I went in there, created a markdown file, and started typing out like, hey, I talked to the stakeholder, and this is what came out. So I started typing there. According to the stakeholder, he is focusing on the track day checklist feature as a way to release something quickly and generating user interest. Since this feature can function independently, he sees it as a good candidate for an initial launch. The idea is to allow users to create a checklist for a specific track day, ability to group items, and so on and so forth. And the other thing that it skipped there, he also mentioned for future enhancements, like adding reminders at the group or item level, improving how the checklist, this, that, and the other. Eventually, he wants this checklist to be tied back to the broader track system, but that's not required for the first release, right? So, had the conversation with the stakeholder, the person explaining what is the problem that they're trying to solve, and they shared with us some future enhancements. Let's write that down. Let's capture that somehow. So I put that in some markdown file here to describe what that thing is. Another thing, right, that we learned is that there is a video somewhere on YouTube where they are showing how that feature works in the current legacy system. I'm like, oh, okay, they're showing that. Well, that's kind of cool. So I can see how it actually works. I can identify some patterns there that maybe we can do a little bit better on the UI, the UX, and all of that. Well, YouTube has this ask button there, and I thought, well, if I click there and say, hey, YouTube, you now have an AI thing, write a detailed summary of this video, right? And then it says, hey, creating and managing templates for checklists. BTT is the name of the website, Beyond the Track. You can view the pre-built templates provided by the BTT and clone them, create your own custom templates. You can set a default template, you can edit and save the templates. So it's like, oh, there's extra content that I didn't have to go through the entire thing and rationalize that yet. You can use AI for that. How does that apply in the real world? Many clients, like my current clients, they have an AI transcriber in our meetings. So when we do sprint planning, sprint review, the AI transcriber is logging all of that. At the end of the meeting, it gives us a summary with all of the main actionable items identified, the main feedback that we heard from the stakeholders, and it's already formatted in a way that even if like the conversation was kind of like crazy and people were going all over the place, the AI transcriber can actually clean up that test and say, okay, here's the important thing out of all that stuff that people kept like going back and forth. This is the important thing. Ooh, because now we can, and I've been using that, I grab that summary, I feed it through AI and say, cut me some user stories for these things that have come up during sprint planning or sprint review. So a lot of time that we used to spend, like, okay, we're in a conversation, we're writing down notes, and then we sit and ponder, like, what did they say again about it? How is that important? How is that of value? We're not spending that time anymore. We're focusing on, we already have a summary of everything that's of importance. Out of that 2-hour meeting, bam, immediately we have that. AI cut me a story, following the formats that we have for user stories, right? And it creates all of that for us. So, meaning is like, pay attention to these tools that are already available. And if you don't have a transcriber like that, before having this AI transcriber, what I was doing was, I was voice journaling. I was dictating everything that I remember about the meetings. Like, well, we discussed this thing here, and then we showed this other screen here. I drew something up on the board, and I was dumping that all into ChatGPT and saying, create user stories out of everything I just told you. Let that sink in. right? The first time I did that, I didn't like the format of the user stories that came out. I told it how, and actually that's part of my, I'm stepping ahead of myself. This is precisely what I did here. I worked with AI to say, this is how I want you to write stories. So I grabbed this description, right, that came out of the video there, like, okay, that's actually pretty good. I added to that markdown file in my project that describes the current features. What else did I do? Yeah, I added a link to the YouTube videos. Oh, there's another video that explains something else about that feature. Describe the thing or summarize that. Use some sort of AI tool to summarize that content. I've added there, and then I said, okay, let's create a stories markdown file, right? And I told the tool here, help me write stories. See initial conversation, that file that I just showed with that the conversation with the stakeholder. The document also includes information about how similar features in their legacy system work. With that information, write stories, which is this new markdown file empty right now that I created, for us to implement what the stakeholders need. I believe that's what I gave it. Like the first time, I let it do the thing, right? It's doing the thing. It's populating the file based on what it's analyzing from those files that I gave it. After a while, created a file with 145 lines there. But then you see, the epic track date checklist management. The track date checklist features allow users blah, 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 blah. Core stories. Story 1, view predefined checklist templates. As a, I want to, so that. Acceptance criteria. Story 2, create custom checklists. As a, I want to, acceptance criteria. Okay, it created that. That's cool. Ahmed, what don't I like about this story here?
Well, I don't really see, you normally like the in order to first.
You got it. That's it. Right? That's it. So I told my little minion here to write stories based on what I gave it. It wrote stories, it wrote acceptance criteria, but I go like, can we change that format? Right? Because I don't like the as a, I want to so that. But I don't just put down the work. I'm gonna work with my companion here to improve those. But anyways, it cut like 8, 9, 12 stories based on those. Again, I didn't have to turn that to a business analyst, somebody dedicated to writing those stories. Like I gave the conversation and some more context that I had and said, just create the stories for me. Oh, now you just do an increment set. No. You revise those stories, you talk to your stakeholders about those stories, make changes, and then you go about implementing. So similarly, for user stories, I have a whole bunch of blog posts where I talk about how I like seeing user stories to facilitate communication and collaboration. There's a reason why I like specific formats. So I pointed it to these different blog posts that I have and the format, the talking about, instead of doing as a, I want to, I do in order to. So start with why. Why is that important? I explain why. Why does it matter? I have it documented there. Refining a user story. When I have a user story and I want to refine that story, what do I do? How do I do that? It's described there. So I go in and say, hey, good job. Let's refine the story so they follow our guidance. And then I have a markdown file with the story writing instructions. And I say, analyze the content here for a better understanding why. And then I give it the links to my blog posts. It's going to read those blog posts, and then it's updating my stories based on that. So it says it's looking at Claudio's guidance and perspective on user stories, blah blah blah, and then it's refining. It even uses that language, right? Oh, now we're refining the story. You already have a story. We are now refining the story, and there you go, right? minor change, but it diminishes that cognitive friction, right? Because we're starting with like, this is why it's important. The other two lines are important, but they are not the most important. It's the first line there, which most people fail at finishing that sentence because they cannot quite articulate why it's important. It should be on that line. We created this, stakeholder reads, in order to efficiently prepare for my track day events. Like, yeah, that's exactly why I need those checklists. That's exactly why. I didn't tell it, like, it was part of those videos, the explanation. It's like, yeah, that's exactly why I need that feature. Right, so it did those things, and then as I kept rolling through that, also check, right, should not be too far from wrapping things up here. Notice that besides the acceptance criteria, now it added the given when ends, right? Even I'm logged in, da-da-da, when I navigate, da-da-da, then I see a list of the created my given when ends. This is something that in the past I had somebody on the team or some bodies writing those by hand, identifying those scenarios, and then, you know, cooking up those. Now we don't need anybody spending a lot of time creating those from scratch. Let AI create and then have a human look through it and make refinements as, you know, a human should do. So we got that going. Make that go a little bit faster. I wanted to get to some other. So we created a whole bunch of those for every single story it had generated before. And by the way, this is a real project, right? It's one of my personal projects that I'm developing using AI to help me. Because as I said, when I go back home, I do not code. I'm thinking, oh, I want to go to the track this weekend. Right? I want to have some fun riding my motorcycle. I don't want to write code. But yeah, like putting together why I need these features, I can do that in my spare time because it's going to help me with my hobby. Right? That's where my mindset is with like using AI for this as well.
Usually a good brainstorming tool too, even if you end up like, you know, well, I'm not quite sure, it gave you all these ideas that you can use or let you know what you don't want to do. And that's some aspect of it that I think a lot of people just don't fully appreciate.
100%. And that's good, we're going to come around to that. Because yeah, you're right on the money there. So I said, hey, the stories look great. Let's implement feature view predefined checklist templates. Create an implementation plan as a checklist and document it in an implementation plan file. Analyze the project to make sure you understand how features are implemented both on the front end and back end. We'll review your plan before implementation starts. Again, I'm onboarding a new developer on the team. I say, here's the user story, here's the code base, look at the code base, see how we implement things, but before you write any code, write down a plan. Like have a sheet of paper and write down like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. Bring it to me. Let me just make sure that you are on the right track there and you can make, you know, adjustments. The same way we should be doing that with people. If we do that with AI, we're gonna get better results. Because most of the time when people say, oh yeah, I'm not using this AI thing because, oh, the things that it creates, it's ridiculous, that's worthless. It's just how you're using it, right? So I tell it to go ahead and do those things. It's going to create that plan for me. Doing the thing. Done it. Yes. Review. Implementation plan. Created an overview. It did an architecture analysis. It found out that, hey, the backend is a .NET Core API using CQRS with Wolverine and event sourcing with Martin. The front end, likely net.js based on README. Next.js. Put a pin on that because we're going to come back to it. We found some other things related to that. Oh yeah, we are using Postgres, okay. Implementation checklist. This speaks to the building context, how it forgets. This is how we keep it from forgetting. So I tell it to do something, and I say, create a plan and make it a checklist. Let's start working on that plan and update the checklist as we go. So it will do something, it's gonna come here and say, yep, we've done this, check. We've done this, check. Computer crashes, the chat goes weird, the context gets all messed up. Say, we're gonna continue this. So the other parts of the chat that got lost, it doesn't matter because you have your user story, you have your checklist that knows where you've been before. So every time, and that's something else that people mention, like working with a real person, that builds up over time, right? So after a few months, that person that you've been working with, they're building their skills. With AI, it's like you're starting to work with this person for the very first time every time you create a new chat. The difference being that if you have instructions, they can read and learn really fast. That is the difference. Right? They can,
And they don't forget,
right?
unless you leave it off prompt.
There you go.
And I'm saying, and you use it to help build up and refine the instructions that it's later learning to use. So it's a nice little cycle.
Exactly. Right? So yeah, you can go through this, you can find out, oh, yeah, you got this wrong, you got that wrong, this is perfect, oh, this is great, thanks for pointing that out. Right? It looks at, oh yeah, we need to create some endpoints. What are the endpoints? And it lists out what are the endpoints that we're going to be creating for that feature. How are we going to do the CQRS, creating the query? What are the controllers that are going to implement whichever endpoint? We're doing authorization. We're doing the front end part. We're going to create the templates, creating the card and list, the navigation, the routing on the front end, the testing, back end, front end test, the documentation. What are you going to be documenting? It's listing out the entire plan. You can look at it and say, nope, we don't do this thing here, we do this other thing. Okay. The only thing the AI has done this far is analyze the request and create a plan for you as the human who knows better to refine.
Right, and you're managing your process because that's where you can say, delete this, I don't want this, or we're using your high level knowledge and skills that.
Yep, that's exactly right. This approach, by the way, is what I've been doing for the last, say, 5-6 months. Now Cursor just released the version that does something similar to this. I actually updated to Cursor yesterday, and when you give it a request, it first starts by saying, let me create a plan for this, and then out of that plan it creates like a to-dos that will keep it. It's essentially doing this. But that's why I said that the tools are changing really fast, and because Cursor has that, well, Rider doesn't, but I was already doing that. If Cursor now does that, it's like, wow, that's great. I don't care about what the tool does, how it does, I care why it does it. And this is why. The importance of this is like, yeah, now Cursor, some of these other tools are implementing this kind of thing, like memories, where you can say, remember that when you make changes, you should make sure the code builds and you run the tests. That's the adding to the memory part. It's something that just came out in Cursor, and other tools will probably do something similar. Because of the whole thing, like, how did you forget about this thing? We've just been over this. You make a change, you run the tests. Sometimes it forgets. Now the tools are allowing you to say, remember the following thing. And then I tell it, like after I've reviewed the plan and everything, I ask my little minion here, before we move, not mover, before we move on with that, are there any questions we should ask the stakeholders?
Yeah.
Right?
I've done that with some of the preview and stories for refinement. Like I would read them, then I'd say, hey, are there any gaps, are there any things we need to ask? And it can give you some pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
Conversations.
Right? So then again, we do that because we don't know it all. The LLM does not know it all, but it can ask some questions that will make you go like, huh, right? Oh yeah, with AI and I'll do that with people as well. Oh, but the guy is just a junior. Doesn't matter. They may be seeing something that you are not. They may be seeing a perspective that you don't have. Ask them, because then it also helps you understand where their mind frame is, how much of it they are understanding will come from that. So it's a way to practice that. Right, so say, yep, go ahead and tell me, are there any questions? And then, pretty cool, it says, you're right to consider stakeholder questions before proceeding with implementation. Here are some important questions we should ask the stakeholders about the view predefined checklist templates feature. Template content questions. What specific categories or groups should be included in the predefined templates? For example, bike preparation, safety gear, tools. How many predefined templates should we initially create, and what should differentiate them? Basic versus advanced, track-specific templates. Some of those questions I had not thought of. When I saw like, well, that's actually pretty damn good, right? So what I do is, and I may have done this here, right? I go through those, some of those may not apply, others are like, that is spot on. User experience questions, business rule questions. That's pretty cool, man. Integration, technical implementation questions, stuff like that. Future considerations, thought that was pretty good too. Getting answers to those questions will help us refine the implementation plan and ensure the features meet stakeholder expectation and user needs. So that was pretty good. And then let's pretend that I took those questions to the stakeholders, clarified some things, maybe I've updated things, or I continued that conversation. I've done that. Come back to you and say, I did ask the stakeholders the following questions. This is what I get back. And I say it like that, the way it comes to mind. Update the user story with whatever I just gave you. And then it cleans up the language, right? And it updates the user story based on whatever I relayed to the tool. We're good to go. Do you have any questions for me before we start executing the plan? Right? Do we have any questions for the stakeholders? They are the most important people here. Let's ask them first. Got that? Do you have any questions for me? Maybe there's something you're unsure how to do, whatever the case might be. Again, you're onboarding another developer, another member of your team. Those are the things you should be asking. Do the same with AI. So I asked that. It comes back with some other good questions. Before we start executing the plan, I have a few important questions to ensure we are aligned. Technology clarification. I want to hit the, was the other one. Should we implement, right here. Should we implement the front end with Next.js as mentioned in the README, or is there another framework preference? I thought that was beautiful. I had not realized that there was a README somewhere in the file that mentioned Next.js. Forgot about it. Weeks later, I decided that I wanted to use something else, Blazor, because I said, no, I wanna stick to .NET on this. I wanna use Blazor. But I didn't inform that anywhere. I gave the instruction to my junior developer. That's what it found, and it created the plan based on using Next.js. And it's asking me, hey, is that what we are using? Like, oh, thanks for asking. Otherwise, it would create something that I would go back to you and say, that's not what we're using. So it created some other questions that were pretty good that I went through, incorporated some of them, data requirements, testing approach, and all that. And then I remembered that, yeah, I actually did create a front-end setup markdown file that talks about actually Blazor. Regarding the front-end, see this file here and updates the implementation plan if needed. We'll tackle the other questions later. Something else that I've done was, those questions are pretty good. Add them to the markdown file as a checklist because I want to answer them later, one at a time. I do that as well. So I told it to do that. So it go to read the document that talks about front-end things. It's now updating the implementation plan to use Blazor. So it's mentioning that in there. It says, yep, likely not Next.js, no, use Blazor WebAssembly, right? Instead of using the The other thing, use the razor pages there. Right? Same thing you would do with the person. Go ahead and update your plan based on the new information that you have. And it updated all that, it updated the examples, so it's telling me, hey, this is how I'm going to be creating the razor implementation. Is that how you want? So I could go like, yes, no, change this. It's my chance to do that at that point. So again, good question, thanks for asking. And then I say, hey, update the README file so we don't get confused again in the future. See, you start getting spoiled, right? Now you can just tell this guy, hey, go ahead, can you just update that document there? Because I forgot, I'm pretty bad at updating documentation. Right, and it's going and it's doing the thing for me, so thank you very much. Right, updated, that's pretty good. And then what did I ask it to do next? The building blocks, kind of like what you were asking about. Oh, now you have to point to all of these files. As you start seeing that kind of pain and experiencing that kind of pain, well, how can we make it better? For this, I just said, hey, update the implementation plan to make sure it refers to the feature in the stories file for acceptance criteria and scenarios. So next time I can just say, we are working on that feature. Go find information about the story, the acceptance criteria, the other things that is in this other file. What it's going to do is it's going to go to the markdown file, just create a link to that thing. Next time you add it to the context, it's going to read that. It's like, oh, it's telling me to go read this other thing here. Okay. Right, so you go building, as you feel the pain, you find a solution for it. Right? Cool. So we did that. And we should be almost there. What do they want to see here? That's just more updating things. Oh, I like this, how because I told it to look at the story for acceptance criteria, it came back to the implementation plan and it created, based on the acceptance criteria, a validation plan. And it says, what is the acceptance criteria? What are the implementation endpoints? One folder for each endpoint that supports the feature. And then within a file like that, it describes. And oh, by the way, let's put some symbol things there. So instead of having like, check this one, check this two, check this three, well, AI is already creating some values that it actually makes sense. It looks like real data. In the past, I used to do that by hand. Creating these contracts, I would create it by hand. Now AI is just doing it for me, right? Once I have that, yep, I can review that, discuss. Maybe we don't want to have that as a Boolean, we want to have it as an integer, whatever. Make the revision of the code, and I don't remember if I got to tell it to implement. I don't think I did. I didn't get that far. Because as part of the technical, I didn't add it to this demo. Like on my real world projects, once we got to this, as a team or between the team lead and the person who will be implementing the endpoints, we go through, we verify the design. Does it follow our standards? Do we want to change the name of the property, the type of the property, whatever? Once we're done with that, then we say, go ahead and implement it. So like in my real world projects, what it does is it creates the integration test in C#. It uses this for my assertion. It writes the test in my given when then format. It sets the permissions. It does all of that stuff. And then it implements the controller by first returning a hard-coded version of this, and it runs the test. What does that give me? It's an endpoint that's up and running that I can already have the UI pointing at it and having a mocked response. So UI development starts right away, allowing us to then split and say, okay, you work on the UI, I'll work on the backend. You already have an example of those responses, so you can work your HTML or JavaScript or whatever, and I'm working on the backend figuring out how am I going to serve up that data. Does it come from one table, multiple tables? Is it a document database? Is it an XML file on disk? From the UI's perspective, who cares? Right? Because we've already discussed the contract for that. So this is how I've been working for years without AI. Now we're just potentializing this. Because now I can onboard more people, or we can handle more stories. Because things like this that would take days for us to put together, now it takes 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes if you consider reviewing and making some changes, and then you just say, go. And then we stop with that, oh, we don't trust implementation of AI tools because they don't know, we write code better than them. Well, if you write some instructions like this, if you use it accordingly, it will produce results that you go like, yep, I'm good with that. It does exactly what the clients asked us to do with refinements at all, and it follows our standards for the tests, how we write our tests, how we write our assertions, and so on and so forth.
Plus, you're always checking the results. You never ever say, "Hey, do this." I'm gonna go ahead and just PR you without looking at it. I mean, that's a mistake people make. It's like, yeah. So you always know at least should anything go sideways, you're looking at it. You're the final, you're the final yay or nay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not to a point where I just trust it. I just say, yeah, go do this, and while I'm gonna go drink a beer or whatever. Nope. Nope. Doesn't work like that. At least for me, it doesn't. No, I do not trust it like that.
Or go drink a beer and come back and look at what it did.
Yeah, exactly. It looks beautiful.
Looks great, yeah.
Right? Okay. Questions there, and then we have the final, the tail end here. This one shouldn't take too long. Any question there? Good? Yeah? Alright. Last bit here, I promise you. From correcting to teaching. So you're not correcting your helper, you're teaching it to do better. You're teaching him or her to do better. Remember, I keep going like, I'm showing you AI, but as a way not just to potentialize your effort, but also to help you train on working with others, leading people the same way you do with AI. Right? Asking the right questions, encouraging documentation and notes, right? Because except for Ahmed, everybody hates updating documentation, right? But it's important. It is important to have good documentation. Get AI to write it. It does a pretty good job. And you can always even if you hate writing them, get AI to generate. You review them, say, I like this, I don't like this. Oh, this is great, this is not so great. You refine it from there, right? Helping others grow through explanation, which is important. Simulated mentorship, give AI an incomplete solution. So this is just something to practice, right? Give an incomplete solution to AI and say, fix it, right? What's wrong about this implementation? And see what you get from it. So ask AI to explain its reasoning. Use that to teach and clarify. So based on what you get back, teach it. Like how do you clarify to get better results? Bringing it all together. Simulate real growth. AI is your always ready junior dev. Doesn't matter how many instructions you gave it, it will forget by tomorrow. As soon as you start a new chat, it knows nothing. But it reads and it learns real quick. Remember that. Practice leadership is like a skill, not a title. That's another thing. A lot of people want to be a team lead because, oh, it's a title. I'm a team lead. It's just a title. Like, really, honestly, who cares? Right? It's not about that. It's about, it's a skill to have to produce good results, collaboration, communication. Develop habits, instruction, documentation, feedback. Now, this is something that I've had with me for many years now. How many people have you seen, or even you do it yourself, where you go to the Scrum board and then, oh yeah, Tony, you have to work on this story here. Can you write out the tasks to implement that story? Do it! Bam! On the board, right? And then several weeks later, it's still on the board under doing it. I know because I've done that in the past and I've seen people do that over and over. Oh, that's just a do it task. It's, we just have to do it. Oh, how long it will take? Oh, I don't know, about 10 hours. It
Could
could
also be poorly defined.
Yes, we bring it up and we have a conversation. That's the thing. Instead of like slapping a do-it task on the board, if it's poorly defined, speak up. Right? You
Yeah.
bring it up.
But you don't know what you don't know.
I know.
And so how do you know the right questions to ask
The,
if you don't?
you're not. So what it's, I've been pondering over that a lot. Like right question, wrong question. I've been trying to think of like, what is the best next question? So like, what don't I know now? Like what do I know now? What don't I know now that I'm aware of it? Is there anything I can see that could be like a big question mark? If I find that, what do you need to do to unveil more of that? So you would put a task on the board to explore that thing that's like, yeah, here I can see this, I can see here, I can see here, I cannot see here. So instead of saying do it, you would add a task. Turn the bottle around. What did you learn? And then out of that, and that's where you negotiate with product owners and you say, look, you're telling me to do this thing, this is all I can see. Okay, what do you need? I need to turn the thing around. Can I do that? Oh, okay. All right, you do the test and then you say, product owner, this is what I found out. Are we ready to commit to this? Do we need to do anything about it? Do we need to remove that story from the sprints? Because like now that we know of this, you just have to be upfront about that.
What I'm talking about is like those work items. The amount of detail in the work item is the title. That's it.
Bring it. So, I know, I've seen that kind of situation a lot, and part of my
Yes,
work
I'm
has
here.
been, part of my work has been like, yeah, you may have that title, you put that title on the screen, if everybody in the room who's gonna be working on that, they go like, yeah, I know exactly what that means. Okay, if you look around the room, people are like, we need to have a conversation. The user story is a placeholder for conversation. It's not requirements. It's not a place to dump, 3 megs of text with requirements. That's not what a user story is. A user story is to have like you and I saying, okay, we need to do that thing. Sorry man, that, I don't know what that means. Can you help me? And then you might ask, what do you know? When you see that, what do you think of? I can say, I think of this, that, and the other. You might say, kind of like that. Or I was like, no, dude, it's not like that at all. 23 years ago, when I first moved to the US, I worked on entire features where I had no idea what the thing was. Like, in the business, they said, oh, you have to create this feature here. It was for lawsuit settlement, and it was a feature to record liens. At the time, I had no idea what that was. Oh, when you have a lawsuit and then you have liens, like, okay, freshly arrived here, English like this later, and I, okay, I'll just do what you say. So the only thing I knew was like, there's this word liens, and because they were doing CRUD, okay, there would be a table, and they told me the requirements. Oh, I need a field for this, I need a field for this, and around that time, I built the entire feature. I delivered the feature, and I could not explain what the damn thing actually was.
Been there, done that.
Right? So I've learned since then, like, if I don't know, I'll just ask. If it's not clear, I cannot really contribute. That's been my talking points. Like, do you want me to just write code for you? Do you want me to solve problems for you? If you want me to help you solve problems the best way possible, you have to help me understand that. Because it's like, I do not understand that. Takes work, man. I know it's not, sometimes I say it's like, the way you say it make it, look easy. It's not. I know it is not. And that's why I create talks about that, to try to like help people go over those things. So, and my point with this was just like, and this is a perfect segue of this, just like it's hard for us people to have a task on the board that we may put there, we say, oh, it's a do-it task because we don't even know enough to task it out. That's why we do it. It's like, I don't really fully understand everything, so I'll just say, do it. And I'll say, it will take 8 hours. It may take 4, it will likely take 32. That's usually how it goes. Well, with AI, it's exactly the same thing. If you give something that's like a task on the board with a title, it will try to figure stuff out and make stuff up. And it will be sitting there doing stuff that comes back like, what the heck was that? Same thing. So the same problem that we see with humans, AI suffers from the same thing. You give it a poor prompt, you're going to have a poor result. Garbage in, garbage out. So it's even more important to have the conversations, to understand the problem that you are trying to address, and then test out, like, what do you understand? From the things that you're looking, what is it that you don't understand that you may need a test to the board to say, I need to explore this thing. Like, oh, you need to do iPhone development. Okay, I see the phone, I'm a developer, I've never done iPhone development. My first test is going to be, where do I even start? Do I need to pick a framework, a tech stack, a language? I don't know. I would have to put those there because that's what I know that I don't know. And then we keep digging in there, right? So that's even more important with AI to get better results. One bit that I actually had another demo here. This one is shorter. With that, the checklist feature for my Beyond the Track website, and this is something that I've been doing as well. Say we get to the end of the sprint, we have to give a demo at sprint review, where most people go in and it's like, yep, here's the feature, the user story said this, we added this button, we click on the button, it goes to the other screen and it sends an email. Who cares? What problem does it solve? No stakeholder sits in a sprint review expecting people to say, we've added a button, we've added a column to a table in the database. That's not what they are there for. So here, what I did was I have a sprint reviews folder in my project. I go there, say sprint review 01, 02, whatever the number of the sprint review is. And then I ask AI, because I work with AI to implement features. And then what I did was, I went over there, typing. I said, hey, we have finished that feature. I need help creating a great presentation for a sprint review to show off the new feature to the stakeholders. And then I kept typing. See if it goes. Selected that. I selected another file because I remember something else that I had logged. I say, so there is a file in the project that describes the main product. So what is this Beyond the Track thing? So I say, hey, there's this other file here with that information, as well as information on how an important stakeholder uses the system. Use that information to create an outline and the main talking points to ensure it fits the needs and wants of the audience. That important stakeholder, so for my Beyond Track, I had an entire video of one of the users of the system giving a talk on how he uses the system, why it's important to him, what problems it solves to him. So I remember I had that video, I'm like, let me grab a transcription, AI transcription, I put it into that document. When I'm creating the sprint review and I know that person's going to be in the room, I say, create a sprint review that's going to appeal to that person, right? It's going to tailor the language to that person. And then write it to this sprint review in markdown file. It's doing the thing. Analyzing. Right? And it created the document. Sprint review, predefined checklist templates, introduction, welcome and purpose, sprint overview, focus on user value, how the new feature addresses real rider needs, and then the problems we are solving. Rider challenge, track day preparation is complex with many items to remember, equipment, logistics, documentation, cost tracking and budgeting. The consequences, What happens when riders forget critical items? Safety risks, wasted time and money, diminished track experience. It's like, it's speaking to the real business problems. There's nothing technical here. It speaks directly to the person, to the people who are going to be receiving that information. And then it lists out the user story. And then it says, hey, here's the feature showcase, predefined checklist template, live demo, walk through the new feature functionality, accessing the template, browsing different templates, reviewing templates, key capabilities, organized by this, clear the template, preview functionality, whatever. Keep going. Benefits to the riders. For new riders, like Michael, which was the person referred in that document. For new riders, reduces anxiety about forgetting essential items, provides expert guidance on what to bring, helps estimate and budget for track day expenses. You are speaking to your audience. The whole thing about like public speaking 101, right? Know your audience. Here, I had information about the audience. I tell AI about what we've worked on. Tailor the message about what resonates with the audience, not what resonates with me. It's with the audience. And then it built that. I can review that and say, whoa, that's actually pretty good. There was one inconsistency here, which I'm going to bring it up in a little bit. It also created next steps in the checklist journey, the upcoming related features, Q&A with the stakeholders, and so on. From there, I went back to the chat and I did one minor thing. I said this, that's great. One minor correction. The video referenced by that document is from 2019. So by now, Michael is no longer a new rider, but rather an experienced one. Little detail, it's important, right? Maybe the guy's gonna say, I'm not a newbie anymore. I'm an experienced rider now. Okay, it went ahead and it updated the thing, right? Little things, and it took me like 2 minutes to get that, to point to the different things, read over these things, catch on the minor details. And now, within a few minutes, I have the script to deliver a badass presentation during my sprint review, where the stakeholder are going to go like, dang, man, your team is amazing. Like, they are really talking our language. They're solving our problems without coming with all the technical, lingo that they use. So that's something that, as I said, I've been using for several months now. I've been preparing sprint review presentations like this for over a decade now, if not more, but it used to take me a lot longer to prepare like that, to do this research, to know who's going to be in the room, why is it important to them. It was a lot of time that I used to do it because for me it's important. Well, now I just use AI to streamline that process, and then I take it on from it. It's like, yep, I can present that and deliver the message that they would like to hear. So your next steps here, try small weekly leadership exercises with AI. Like whatever you are doing this week, if you were to train somebody else, try that on AI. What would that be? I'm going to train AI on solving a complex algorithm in C#, to write a bowling exercise in C# or JavaScript or TypeScript, whatever. Like, how would you train somebody else on that? Try that on AI. How do you explain that? How do you articulate the whys and how you want certain things done? Pair this with real mentoring when possible. Oh, you did that with AI to practice that skill? Say the bowling exercise, the TDD bowling exercise, training AI to do it? Now maybe talk to a junior developer, to another developer who is not into TDD, for instance. Say, hey, you don't do TDD? You want to try something here? A little mentoring thing? The thing you just practice with AI, practice with a person. See what you learn, right? Track what works and iterate. Like what kind of messaging, what kind of documentation work with people. You're going to learn. Like in my case, if you start explaining something to me with a lot of words, I'm going to say, hold on, that's a lot of words. It's not creating images. Can we walk to the board and draw it up? Because that facilitates for me, for my understanding. as you coach other people, you have to look for these hints. Is this people a verbal thinker? Is this person a visual thinker? And then adjust the message to it. And like, I don't know exactly how to communicate like verbal only, so I can use AI to say, hey, I drew up an image. This is what I have in my mind. Can you write it out so that a verbal thinker can understand? Because I can't, hey, I can. Or same thing, if somebody gives me like a lot of text and I'm like, I cannot visualize that. Drop it into AI and say, hey, create an image that will help me understand this concept. Same thing. Use those skills, practice those skills to work with people, and it works really well with AI. As I said, a lot of these stories, besides the verbal things that I give it, when I have ideas, I walk up to the board and say, I'm thinking of a UI that's going to have the following screen with a list here and a button here to execute the thing. I take a photo, I drop it, saying cursor, and I say, this is the UI that I'm thinking about it. This is some information that I can give you about it. Cut the story for me. Or plan out the implementation. It reads the image and it's pretty amazing what it does. There have been situations where I drew something up that it was kind of like not that great of a drawing. It picked up on that, and when it implemented it, showed up on the browser, the implementation of the thing. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Some of the decisions that it made, like, oh, am I going to use a list, a drop down, or something? How am I going to organize the UI? The things that it picks just from a hand-drawn mock-up, it's mind-blowing. So leverage those things as well. That's it. Questions, comments, concerns, any actionable items or things that you're going to try tomorrow.
I mean, that would give
The slides.
Oh, go ahead, no, I'm just saying, this is to get ideas.
Are the videos all with slides? So if we get the slides off, yeah.
I will send, so thank you, let me also bring this back up.
Thanks very
So,
much. Yeah.
yes, I will send a link to the image, to the slide, and to the video, so that you can like play, because as you see, like I stop, I pause, you can play that at your own pace. And I'll send some more information related to these things that I showed here. So yeah, please go there, give me some comments, questions, suggestions that you have that would help me improve this content, and I'll send you the content and all this stuff.
No, I'm just saying, you gave me an idea, that's what I want to try.
Oh yeah? Cool. Once you try it, you're gonna share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna try it. I'll share the results with you. The main thing is depends on like what the team says, because of course, but it's something I'm at least gonna try my own, and then maybe try to give the team, of course, their final word on whether or not it goes anywhere. But you give me an idea, it's something I want to try out. So yeah, depending on how it goes, I may very well share. And if it kind of gets bounced by someone, maybe like, what the heck?
Well, and even like you try the idea and it bombs, share that. Like, why did it bomb?
True.
Right, it's like the same thing when I try like selling people on TDD and they go try and they come back like, yeah, it didn't work. Please tell me why.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's something else we can try.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm pretty sure if it bombs, it's not going to be because anything with it. It's probably just going to be like team buy-in. That's really where.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
Sweet. Cool. That it? Yeah?
That's good.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for coming. You have my contact information there, and on the slide you're gonna get that as well. Thank you all very much for showing up. I'm sorry it took me quite a long time to go through all of this, but I wanted to get everything out. So like, this is all I got. You got everything. I'm not holding anything back. That's usually how I do it.
Thank you.
Thanks you guys.